What is happening, everyone? Give me just a second. I'm trying to get this to go live, and it's giving me a little bit of fits. So give me just a sec and see if I can get this to push into the digital business group. It may not, and if it doesn't, that's fine. But I had it set where it would do it, but it doesn't seem to want to cooperate now. Gotta love it when things don't cooperate, especially when it has to do with technology. But that's just part of it, isn't it? Let's see here. Yeah, there's too many things to look through right now, so we just won't worry about it right now. I will push it into the group later, but we're gonna give everybody a few minutes here to join. What's up, Dina? What's up, Kevin? Right, looks like we got a few people on now. Hopefully we'll have a whole bunch more. You never know on these late night Zooms who's going to be able to join and who isn't. It's kind of one of those toss-ups, right? Toss-ups. So we'll give everybody a few minutes here, get everybody join, and then we're going to hop in. We're going to hit, if you want to open a Bible up, you're more than welcome. We're going to be in 2 Kings tonight. And so you directly invited 2 dozen. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Hey there, Scott. What's up, man? Yeah, still early on the West Coast, right? Yeah, man. That's awesome. Yeah, hopefully we'll have a bunch more join and we'll get a good group here going. I know there were probably 30, 40 people that had said they were coming tonight, but again, 7 o'clock on a Thursday night, who knows? But either way, we're going to have a little bit of fun tonight. We're going to get into probably a story. I don't even know if it's a story that you've ever heard or paid attention to in scripture, but I hope it's a story that will help you. And I know some of you teach and do that kind of thing. So if you haven't heard this story, maybe it's something that you could use in one of your lessons or something that you're doing with, especially with kiddos. There's so many directions. So Kevin, one asked if there'd be a sales pitch at the end. That is not what this is about. So I'm going to talk to them about the challenge. People are welcome to join if they want. But that is not what this is about tonight. This is about looking at stories, just like it always is, looking at some kind of biblical story and taking some kind of business, whether it be things that we need to do, whether it's just ideas, thoughts, ways scripture uses story to tell, things that we need to be doing, right? And so tonight we're going to kind of look at that. We're going to see about these 4 guys that were very, very, very unlikely heroes, and then we'll jump into it. So, okay, we're what, 3 minutes in? If you guys don't, I think probably everybody on here that I saw a minute ago knows who I am, but I know this is going to be shown to a lot of other people down the road. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Cory Long. I spent about 17 years in full-time ministry. We started out in youth ministry, worked in children's homes, worked with college ministries. The last full-time ministry that I was involved in was running a children's home in Wichita, Kansas, for young ladies that were trafficked, abused, neglected, homeless. We worked with kids. I think the youngest we had while I was there was 11. And we worked with kids that were up to mid-20s. And so, so I've seen, dealt with, worked with a lot of different types of ministries, worked in a lot of different types of ministries. And through all that time, I love stories. And so Kingdom Mandate calls are a chance for me to be able to pull out some of those stories that I've heard, I read, studied, and see what kind of biblical principles, thoughts, ideas that we can pull from them, glean from them. Because I think sometimes we look at scripture and we think, like a normal Sunday morning service and a normal Bible study or a normal whatever, when in reality, man, there's so much we can glean from scripture for our business lives specifically. So we're gonna look at a story about 4 lepers tonight that ended up saving a king in his city. and their people, and kind of dig into that a little bit. Some of you know that I run other businesses, have other things. We're going to talk a little bit of that at the end. If that's something of interest to you to be involved in, we have a free challenge that's going to start next week to get a view of what we're doing. But really, this is about digging into some scripture and seeing what God can open the doors for tonight. So let's dig in, and hopefully we'll have some others join us. You're welcome to use the chat. If you guys have not used Zoom much, hop on the chat, and that's where we'll kind of ask questions and be involved. There's a lot of people in here I know that already kind of know me and know what's going on. So this should be pretty easy tonight to kind of fly through. All right, so we're going to be in 2 Kings chapter 7. There's a lot of stories that lead up to this. So if you haven't gone through and read some of these Old Testament stories, man, I would highly suggest, especially if you haven't gone through and kind of studied the life of Elisha. Oh my goodness, there's so much meat, so many things that you can pull out. I don't guess it was last summer, it's the summer before last, I filled in at a church for about a month and a half. I was teaching Sunday mornings, Bible study for adults. I was preaching some, I was lead worship some, I was teaching men's Bible study, I was helping with the youth group. I was doing a little bit of everything because their preacher had left. They needed somebody to kind of fill in. And one of the things that I dug into was the life of Elisha. And man, if you go back and you start looking at how he was called and what he did, and just look through the storylines of really where he gained confidence from, right? How he lived his life, the things that he was exposed to and did. It's really cool, really cool. So we're going to continue with that here. This is after some of the storylines that you probably have heard before or read before, like how Elisha opened the eyes of the servant to see the army that was defending him and his servant. Things like that maybe you haven't maybe seen in a while. This comes into the storyline a little bit further. What we're going to read about tonight is how Samaria was under siege. The king of Israel had Elisha had basically told the king of Israel, this stuff's going to happen. He gave a prophecy, right? He told him this stuff's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. And the king blamed Elisha for the problems that they were having. They were under siege by the king of Aram. And they'd been under siege for so long that they were eating donkey heads. They were selling pigeon dung. Like, it was bad. I mean, we're talking like people were eating people kind of thing. Like it was bad. They were in siege for so long, no money, no resources. It was bad, right? And the king blamed Elisha. He blamed God, right? And Elisha comes along and says, hey, all of this is going to end tomorrow. We're going to have food. We're not going to be under siege. Things are going to go back to prices the way they should be. And everybody's going, nah, that can't happen, right? We'll believe it when we see it, right? And that's kind of where we enter this story. There's these 4 lepers that we're going to read about. We're going to read this a little bit. We're going to talk about it a little bit. We're going to read it. We're going to talk about it. But there's these 4 unlikely heroes, these 4 lepers that are sitting at the gate, and probably been kicked out of the city, right? They weren't wanted there. And so they were sitting at the entrance to the gate, trying to decide what they're going to do. Big choices, big decisions. And that's what we're going to kind of dig into tonight is really not only these guys make big decisions for themselves, but how God used them to save a people, right? And so we're going to start in verse 3. We'll read down through and we'll chat a little bit. We'll read down through, chat a little bit. And then we'll kind of close it out with some other comments. So now there were 4 men who were lepers at the entrance to the gate, as they said to one another, why are we sitting here until we die? If we say, let us enter the city, the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. If we sit here, we die also. So now come, let us go over to the camp of the Syrians. If they spare our lives, we shall live. If they kill us, we shall but die. I mean, they were already dying anyway, right? They had leprosy. They were lepers, right? So they arose at twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. But when they came to the edge of the camp of the Syrians, behold, there was no one there. So you got these four guys. They're sitting at the entrance. They had been kicked out probably. They basically have just a couple of choices. They can either sit here and die, they can go back in the city and starve because everybody inside the city was starving, or they could go to the Syrian camp and maybe, just maybe, they'll at least feed them or something. They won't kill them, right? They really didn't have a whole lot of choices here. And as we talked about a minute ago, the choices inside the city were not good. People were literally dying of starvation, but they had to make a choice, right? They had to make a choice. And not only that, what were they worried about? They were only worried about themselves at this point, right? They're sitting there going, hey, we either go in the city, die. We sit here, die. We go out to the Syrian army, we could die, but we might live, right? Backs against the wall. How many times in scripture do we see people that have to step out in faith, not knowing what's going to happen, and just hoping, right, in faith that whatever happens, they don't die, right? Maybe they get fed, and maybe something else happens, right? And so these guys are literally, they wake up at twilight, they march out, or they walk out to the Syrian army's camps, and boom, there was nobody there, right? For the Lord had made the army of the Syrians hear the sounds of chariots and horses, the sounds of a great army, so that they said to one another, behold, the king of Israel had hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Egypt to come against us. So they fled away in the twilight, abandoned their tents, their horses, and their donkeys, leaving the camp as it was, and fled for their lives. When these lepers came to the edge of the camp, they went into a tent, and they ate, and they drank, and they carried off silver and gold and clothing, and went and hid them. Then they came back, entered another tent, and carried off things from it, and went and hid them. Look, they were hungry, they were sick, they were basically at the end of their lives. They didn't really have much left to lose, right? And they go to the camp, they find food, they find clothing, they find riches beyond anything that they could believe, right? And the very first instinct they had was what? And it's the same instinct that happens a lot of times with us, right? First instinct they had was selfish. They wanted to keep it all for themselves. They took stuff, right? They took the gold, and they took clothing, and they took silver, and they went and hid it for themselves, right? And that was that first thing, even though there was plenty. I mean, this is a Syrian army's camp. It's not, they went into a couple of tents. How many tents would there have been? I don't know. A whole lot more than a couple, right? How much gold and silver would there have been? How much food would there have been? How much clothing, horses, donkeys, right? Other livestock. Who knows what all was there? And yet all they could see immediately was, hey, we need to take this and we need to go hide it, right? Because a lot of times that's what we do, right? We don't realize how blessed we truly are and how plentiful and abundance there are. We just talked about in our group the other night about how, or I talked the other day about how we can have a scarcity mindset or we can have an abundance mindset. And these guys had a scarcity mindset that I need to hoard this stuff. I need to hide it. I need to get it for myself because there's not enough. There's plenty out there, right? There's plenty for everybody. It's just a matter of what we see, right? And then all of a sudden we see that they changed their minds, right? Then they said to one another, we are not doing right. This day is a day of good news. If we are silent and wait until the morning light, punishment will overtake us. Now, therefore, come, let us go and tell the king's household. So we see them flip the script, right? We see them go from, no, I don't want anybody else to have any of this. We're going to go hide it. We're going to eat the food. We're going to keep the silver and the gold for ourselves. To, I want to share the good news, right? I want to do something that's good. I want to go tell the king. I want to tell the people that are stuck inside that city and inside the gates that are starving, right? And in many ways, that's I get asked all the time, why do you do what you do? Like, why do you spend as many hours and as much time and as much effort and all that stuff doing the trainings and the coaching and the consulting and all the other stuff that I do? Um, Bottom line is, guys, I feel completely blessed where we're at. When we first started doing what we're doing now, we got out of ministry work. We started trying to figure out a way to do ministry without taking a paycheck. That was the whole point of why we started the businesses we have now. And it's allowed us, I'm in my RV now. We're sitting in freezing cold West Texas. We're supposed to get down to like 9 or 10 degrees tonight in our big old motorhome. We got the heated floors on, we got the heat blowing, and I feel blessed. We get to travel around, work with churches, work with camps, work with children's homes, work with nonprofits. I get to fill in and preach. I get to teach, get to lead worship, right? We get to, the other year at camp, I got to go and drive. I got to drive a Hummer every day and do mountain scooters and just watch families as they got time to be able to spend together. That's how I wanted to spend my time. And the cool part about it is the more blessed I felt, the more I felt like, hey man, we need to not only do for these people, but I need to teach others that have the same heart as me, that want to go bless other people, that want to support missions and support churches and maybe support themselves as they're on the mission field. All of those things, right? And so um, that's where I'm at now. Is we're at a point where, man, we are blessed. I don't want to just keep all this to myself. I want to go help people. Let's go help people. Let's go see if we can find other people that want to go do the same thing. These guys were in that same boat, right? They were blessed. There was tons of stuff here. Nobody knew the camp was going to be empty. God had created the sound of chariots and horses. These guys thought that these four guys were a whole army coming, not just their army, but other armies from Egypt and right. God had done something that was a miracle. They got there. Initially, it was all about themselves. And then before long, it became about everybody else. Let's go do that, right? So pick up the story in verse 10. So they came and called to the gatekeepers of the city and told them, hey, we came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no one to be seen or heard there. Nothing but the horses tied and the donkeys tied and the tents as they were. Then the gatekeepers called out, and it was told within the king's household. And the king arose in the night and said to his servants, I will tell you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we're hungry. Therefore, they have gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the open country, thinking when they come out of the city, we shall take them alive and get into the city. Right? What's the first reaction? If any of you have went, especially if you've done discipling, if you've done missions work, if you've gone out, especially if you've done youth ministry, like kids will just tell you what they think, right? I love working with youth kids and college kids because they don't hold anything back. They just tell you what they think. And you when you start sharing the good news of Christ, when you start sharing, right, your testimonial with them, when you start sharing those things, what's usually the first reaction? It's usually doubt, right? When I tell people that, my wife, many of y'all know that my wife has multiple sclerosis. It's been a big part of our lives because we deal with it daily, right? She deals with it daily. And when we were in Westgate Church of Christ in Little Abilene, Texas, she went and had an aluminum filling removed. We didn't have a biologic dentist do it. The dentist just drilled the mercury out. And when they drilled the mercury out, it went into her bloodstream, which immediately caused a MS reaction. And within 24 hours, she was numb from her chest down. She was like that for about 30 days. We were broke youth ministry family living at the very edge of our means, if not above our means. Credit card debt, the whole 9 yards. And I was trying to figure out how do we do what we need to do to help my wife. I never told anybody how much money we needed to be able to get the help that we needed from a naturopathic doctor that we found that we felt like could help her MS. Well, first of all, we went about 30 days of her not being able to walk, not being able to do much. I mean, I was carrying her everywhere. People were telling us, right, that, hey, you're going to need to start working towards wheelchair and accessibility. And Our daughter was 5. She was in kindergarten, had no idea what's going on, right? Couldn't understand why mommy couldn't pick her up, carry her places, do things, right? Um, so at some point, I'm I'm on my knees praying every day. God, we need a miracle. I need you to heal my wife, right? We get 30 days down the road or so, and I'm reading scripture and I'm going, hey man, scripture says when somebody's sick, the elders should come and pray over them and anoint them with oil. And so I called my elders and I was like, hey, I need you guys to come. Let's do what scripture says. We're gonna read this stuff and believe this stuff. We better do it, right? And the elders come and anoint her with oil and pray over her. And the next morning, put her in the bathtub, got the water running. She hollers at me because the water's too hot. I go back in there, turn down the water, and we both realize she's got feeling back in her feet that she hadn't had for 30 days. Can't explain it. It's a God thing, right? Also can't explain that we went to get treatment at the clinic of this naturopath. We didn't have any money. And the craziest thing would happen, man. I would walk into church on Sunday mornings and people would come up almost every Sunday. I told no one our financial needs or any of that stuff. Prayed about it. Talked to my personal family about it, which had nothing to do with the church life there. People would come up and they would shake my hand and there would be money in their hand. And it would be just enough money to pay for what we just had happen. Happened every time. Never asked, never told anybody. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. God just blessed us through the people within the church. And it was all kinds of different people. Many of them had no idea what we were going through. They just knew that she was getting treatment, dealing with MS, right? It was a God thing, right? And what's the first thing that happened? I can tell you, like I've told these stories before in many different places. And one of the first things that happens many times is no different than what happened to that king, right? His first reaction was doubt. He doubted it. He doubted what I said, even though I witnessed it with my own eyes. I lived it. I breathed it. I saw it. I was amazed by it and never understood it. But I was super thankful, right? And I watched that happen. And I tell you, what's good is he watched it happen, but we're going to see here in a minute he took action, right? But many times we do this, hey, if it's too good to be true, well, then it can't be true, right? I mean, guys, y'all know people that have been healed, probably. I would assume y'all do. I know we have. I've watched one of our girls that came out of our children's home that had been abused and had some really awful stuff happen to her. I watched her dad go through COVID not too long ago in the hospital on the ventilator. They brought up people in and said, y'all need to say your goodbyes. And it wasn't about a week and a half, 2 weeks later, he walked out of that hospital through prayer. The doctors said, he's like, we can't do anything else. Right? And yet, a lot of times, the first time when we tell people the good news, when we share our testimony with people, there's doubt, right? That's that first reaction. And that's just the way it'll happen. But man, there's so many times that God's going to open that door if we'll allow him to, right? There's so many times that God will open that door for us to be able to do things, to be able to do things well beyond what we think we can do. And he's done that in our lives, not only through the health of her. I've seen it many times. Finances, seen it many times. The businesses that we have, I'm not smart enough to run the business. Like, it's a God thing. It's not a Cory thing, not a Michelle thing. It's a God thing. And it's pretty cool to watch how he continuously uses us. And we want to be that. We want to be that. We want to be there. We want to be available, right, to be used. And so you've got the king. He's sitting there, and that's where he's at. But then he basically says, "Hey, I'm going to doubt, but then I'm going to trust, and then I'm going to verify." right? Because he doubts it. And then he says, oh, no, here's what we think they're going to do, but let's get some men together, take some horses, right? And let's go see what's going on. Let me send some guys to go verify what you guys are saying, right? And sometimes that's what needs to happen, right? Sometimes we need to have verification that what we've seen or heard is what really happened, right? And that's what he did. And so we read on into the story. Here we, I mean, I love these stories because there's just so much meat in them, right? We read on into the story. So they took 2 horsemen, and the king sent them after the army of the Syrians, saying, "Go and see." Right? He's going out to verify. So they went after them as far as the Jordan, and behold, all the way was littered with garments and equipment that the Syrians had thrown away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king, "Guys, look, 4 lepers sitting outside of a literally sitting outside uh, of a sieged city that was dying of hunger, decided that they were going to risk getting completely killed by the Syrian army." Goes out there. God literally makes these sounds as if the chariots and the armies are coming, right? Syrians get freaked out, run away, leave everything, dropping garments along the way. The king doubts it at first, sends a couple of guys to go check it out, right? And then we see in verse 16, then the people went out and plundered the camp of the Syrians, right? And so all of the things that Elisha just told them, the cost of fine flour was a shekel, and then the cost of the barley was a shekel, exactly the way Elisha had told them. The people doubted, the king doubted, but Elisha believed, right? And that's the storyline, right? These 4 guys had no idea what they were doing, right? Elisha knew what was like, he knew that God was going to do something crazy, and a miracle was going to happen. And the people were going to be back to normal. They were going to have food. They were not going to be under siege. They were going to be able to do the things that they needed to do. They were going to get gold and silver, right? And they were going to be able to eat, and they were going to have more than enough. And sometimes that's what happens with us, right? Sometimes I got to say, man, I almost feel like that's we've been there a few times in life. We've been at that gate when nothing seemed to be going right. Health issues, like I just described a minute ago, money issues. Like we've been down to where we had to go and look in the couch to see if we're going to have enough gas money to be able to get somewhere, right? I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. But we've been there. We've been there where the checking account didn't have enough money left in it, and our back was against the wall. And those are the moments, right, where we have to decide what we're going to do. We have to make a decision. These 4 guys decided that that they needed to make a big decision here, and it was more than just about food at that point. They were already sick. They were already having issues. They'd already been outcast, right? Some of you probably are in that situation today, in the sense of, especially after the last couple of years, your back may be against the wall financially, health-wise. Maybe your relationships have blown up because of COVID. Maybe your career's blown up since COVID, right? I hear the stories every day. I mean, did y'all even see like the young lady that was crowned Miss America the other day? She was a up and coming attorney, was crowned Miss America like 3 years ago, has been doing like interviews, was just interviewing Denzel Washington last week. And the girl jumped out of a building this week, 29th floor, right? Everything, like if you look at her social media, in everything looked right. Everything looked like she was together. Something wasn't right, right? Her back was against the wall, and she chose a different way, right? And that's where we've got to be able to share the good news. And some people are going to doubt. Some people are going to trust and verify. right? They're going to go, hey man, Cory lives a different life. This is what he says. This is what he believes. I see it lived out. Maybe there's something to that God stuff. Maybe there's something to that Christianity stuff, right? Maybe I should ask him more. Man, there is nothing better than we did Young Life for a couple of years, helped with Young Life College. I would have this group of goofy kids showing up at our house every week to eat. We'd do a Bible study. Sometimes we'd go out in the backyard and cook s'mores and have campfires. Sometimes we'd shoot guns. Sometimes, like, we did all kinds of crazy stuff because a lot of these kids had never done those kinds of things. The one thing that was more fun than anything else, uh, those kids, many of those kids had never heard Bible stories. They had no clue about scripture. Some of them, they kind of knew, like, if you ask them, hey, do you believe in God? They go, oh yeah, I believe in God. But if you dug any deeper than that, right? They had no faith. They had no basis for their faith. They didn't know any of those scripture stories. And so I would get to sit down with them every week and share stories with them, and they would just light up. They were like, I've never heard that. I didn't know that. Right. And many times I think, especially today, man, we meet so many people that need the good news, and they need somebody to step out in faith, just like the four lepers did, even when it wasn't comfortable, and even when the odds were against them, they still stepped out in faith. And we see it all through Scripture, right? We see people all through Scripture doing the same exact thing. Some of you have gone through some really tough times in the last few years. And man, that's hard to watch. I mean, I watched it with my own family. And I want to encourage you tonight, right? I want to encourage you tonight because there's plenty. There's an abundance. Just like these four lepers found once they came to that Syrian camp. We think it's scarcity. We want to hold on so tight. But in reality, there truly is an abundance. And we've been on all sides of that. We've been where we've been broke and things were really tough. I tell the story, and people that know me know that when we moved from, we ran the children's home at Carpenter Place. I got burnt out. After about 2.5 years, I started developing ulcers and high blood pressure. And I literally was internalizing, and it was affecting me physically to deal with the stories of these young ladies. We had girls that were trafficked, and I was dealing with those kids every day. I was working with those kids, and I loved every minute of it. I look back now, and I mean, I am in touch with so many of those kids that have had great lives because of that home. And but it was affecting me physically. Emotionally, I was internalizing it, and it was coming out in physical sickness. And so we left there and went to help another children's home plant a thrift store for just a very short amount of time. Got that up and running, and our daughter was a junior in high school, and we were like, my wife and I were looking at each other going, we need to focus on our family for a change and not everybody else's, because up until that point we had everybody else's kids all the time, right? It's just kind of the way we lived, which was great. We loved every minute of it. Wouldn't take anything for all of it. But at that point, if Cory was ever going to retire or do other things or send his kid to college, blah, 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 right? Just keep going, right? We had to make some changes. I had to call my dad and ask for money for us to be able to move back to Texas so that we could make some changes, because I didn't have enough money in our bank account to be able to do that, because we'd been doing ministry for so long, making so little that we'd just been pouring it back into our ministry, or what little bit we had. And we just really didn't have anything. We get back to Texas, we start one business, and it does okay. And then we start this other business, which is what we do now, doing digital marketing. And before long, that's kind of what took off. And we've been on both sides of that now. We've been where we've had nothing, and we've been where we could have whatever we want. And I know some of you struggled through the last few years, and it's been a struggle. What's been great about the digital marketing world is everything's gone online. So our business has just grown, which has been a huge blessing the last few years. And I think what you'll see when you start looking at especially the stories like this, and you look at scripture, especially, I mean, guys, who in the world would have thought that 4 lepers were going to save the city and turn it all around and create abundance? Um, Here's what I challenge you with tonight, right? Um, we've done it all. We've been in ministry and been broke. We now have multiple businesses. I actually set up another LLC today for a new business that we're about to start. We have abundance now. We're doing all kinds of fun things that we've never been able to do before. We're blessing families, blessing ministries. We're carrying on. When I was broke and I'd come back, my dad would slip me $100 bills because we need gas money to be able to get home. Um, and and we're getting to do that now. We ate with one of the young men that were in our Young Life group the other day. That's from South Africa. That's just the coolest kid ever. We got through doing that, and my wife was like, "Hey, we need let's give him a $100 bill because we want to share that, and we want to bless others because it's not about me. It's not about what Cory can do. It wasn't about what the 4 lepers could do. Those 4 lepers they did what they needed to do. God used them. God caused a miracle, right? Syrians left, right? King of Israel, people go out, they get what they need, right? But those 4 guys took risk, and I hate to say it, but fear, man, fear is gripping everything right now. If those 4 guys would have let fear stop them, or if the king would have let fear stop him, how sad would that have been if those 4 guys would have came back and said, "Yeah, man, they're gone," and the king gone, "No, I don't believe it," and they just stay behind the walls. And yet, there's so many people that do that nowadays. There are things that you can do to change your world, and there's so many people that stay behind the wall, and they let fear stop them from doing the things in their lives that they could be doing. Um, God will meet us right when we step out in faith, and that's kind of what we've done, and that's um that's what we continue to do, and it's a pretty cool thing that you can get to a point like right now. We get to travel full time. We're in Big Spring right now helping with my dad's estate. While we're here, I've been meeting up with friends and doing some family. Got my brothers here, and we're getting to kind of do some things, and then we're going to head to go deal with some medical stuff for my wife that we would have never been able to do without what we're doing now. And then we're going to head to Missouri to go be a part of the doctor's office up there. They want us to come back and do a bunch of other stuff, and so we're going to head up there. We can spend that time. We don't have to be anywhere. We don't have an office to clock in at. We don't have any of that stuff. We're not restrained by hours every day. We're not restrained by the financial means. We don't have to worry about those things at this point. Um, and that's when I feel just like those 4 lepers, right? I feel just like them. I feel like I've ran into a city of tents full of all this stuff, and we've been blessed. And yet I see all these people around me that are still stuck in the city, and they don't realize what's going on outside the city, right? And that's why I do what I do now. That's why we have these Kingdom Mandate calls, which I haven't been able to do any in a while, but we're hoping to crank these things back up again and get them going. That's why we do the Freedom to Serve Challenge, which we're doing next week. I'm going to show you that in a minute. If you guys want to join, it's free. It's a free Freedom to Serve Challenge. It doesn't cost you a dime. You can come and learn. That's why we're doing that, because we want to try to bless as many people as we possibly can. That's why it's so much fun to me when I hear stories like the stories that I hear almost daily now. We have a minister that reached out to me yesterday, and he said, we hit $4,000 last month in extra income. And he said that was only a partial payment for a huge website that we're building. And I was like, dude, could you have ever dreamed that you would be making that much from a little side hustle while you do youth ministry full time, you run a podcast full time, you do all these other things full time. This is a guy that grew up 30, 40 minutes from me that I've known for a long time. He's known me for years and years and years. Um, that when he reached out to me, he said, I want to be able, he was, you talking about doubt. He was like, can what you do really work? Is what you're doing, could it really work for me? And we were kind of talking about it. And I said, I can show you. Right. He bought in after a lot of talking, a lot of doubt, a lot of trusting and verifying. Right. He bought in and he told me yesterday, he said, I think we can double that this month. And I said, dude, he said, I told him, I said, I don't think you're really that far from 10K then in a month. This is as a extra side hustle just to help with his family while he's doing full-time ministry. And I'm like, oh my goodness. He said, yeah, we won't be far from 10,000. Maybe by March, we'll be at 10,000 a month and we'll be setting that next goal. And they're wanting to buy a home with some land so they can bless the kids that they have in their youth ministry to come out there and do stuff in the families and use it as a resource for ministry. And I'm like, what a cool thing, right? We have another guy that's literally building his business partially to be able to buy a business for a missionary at his church so they can stay in the country they're in, because they have to have it to be able to have their work visa. We have another guy that got into the business he started it. The story's going, he started his business so that he could actually just help some of the people that he works with to plant churches at colleges. And he wrote me after about 6-8 months and he goes, we have so much extra income, we're just going to build a building for this ministry. I'm like, seriously? He goes, yeah, man. He said, we don't need the money. He said, we're so blessed already that we don't need it. That's what excites me now. It excites me to be able to help people to be able to go do something else, right? And Rob's saying he's stuck in the city, right? How many people, like, man, I see it all the time. People that are stuck in the city and don't see that just right outside of there's 4 goofy lepers that decided to go take a walk, that went out of, courage. They walk into a camp that's empty and they're able to eat and have food and have wealth, like they never dreamed. And yet the people in the city had no idea, right? Until the king went out. All right. So here's the challenge right now. I would definitely encourage you, if you haven't, go back through and read some of those scriptures. Read some of those scriptures, because man, if you go back through Elisha's story and you start looking at the different stories, like the story of the arrows, we may even use that for one of these Kingdom Mandate calls. There's so many cool stories in there about how God pushes us to get out of our comfort zone. He'll bless us if we'll move. Sometimes it's not blessing in the way that we think, though, right? And it's not that it's necessarily going to be easy. Guys, I worked my tail off to get where we're at now. 70, 80-hour weeks. I gave up time with my family. I gave up time with all kinds of stuff to where I can spend all the time I want now. We spent all summer last summer with our daughter, helping her get moved from Texas to Colorado to be able to do things. And I look at that and I think, how many people could spend 3 months with their kid just helping them get established and moved in and doing that kind of thing? And we were blessed. She was blessed. We got to be a part of her little church up there that she goes to now in Aspen. Great little church. And just enjoying life, right? Getting to do things that we never dreamed that we'd be able to do. And now we're able to do it. So read the story of Elisha. Go through some of those storylines. It will amaze you. It will encourage you. And especially if you're stuck in the city right now, seeing Elisha's bravery, courage, and seeing those storylines that happen. Sometimes we need to be like that servant that Elisha had, where the servant was scared at death because all he did is see this army out there. He saw this army coming to invade, and Elisha goes, no, 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 you don't understand. And he basically opens his eyes, right? And he sees the Lord army going against them. He had no idea. He had no idea, right? And sometimes we need our eyes opened. So tonight, I hope this encourages you. I hope that you're not going to stay in the city, right? If you're in one of my courses, you know what you need to do. You got all the tools, right? You have all the tools available to you. If you're not in one of my courses, join my free challenge next week. It's free. Doesn't cost you a dime. I'm actually going to teach you a method to be able to go out and make money next week. Free charge. There is an upgrade if you want to go VIP and spend 2 hours a day with me instead of 1 hour a day. It's up to you. I think it's like, I don't know, it's not much money. It's just probably about what it costs you to take your family out to go eat. We do that on purpose. But come join me next week in the challenge if that's of interest to you. And then you can see if this is something that you might want to do. This isn't going to be for everybody, and that's okay. But I can't go through and do what I do without sharing it with other people. I want to share the good news of where we're at, what we do, hoping that other people will grab a hold of that too and be able to go do the same thing. What if there were thousands of people out in RVs that were blessing and doing ministry without having to worry about a paycheck? Right? What if missionaries didn't have to go and stress about funding and fundraising, and they were able to go and just bless? What if pastors and preachers like we were didn't have to just sit around? Like, I don't know where we got this idea of poverty has to meet with ministry. It's not taught in scripture, by the way. I don't know where we got that idea, but we don't have to live that way. There are ways for us to do other things. There are ways for us to be able to bless people and bless families, and especially if you're in a church ministry, man. I'll give you one more example. In fact, hang on. Let me grab one thing. If you guys have not, if y'all want to be a part of the challenge, I'm going to put this in the chat. That's the link for you to sign up. There's no cost. You get in, join us, spend an hour a day with me for the next week. We're going to give away some crazy prizes, even a laptop. You don't have to spend a dime and you get a chance to win a laptop, along with many other things. I think it's a MacBook or something. I don't use Apple, but that's what they wanted to give away. So I'm like, great. People get excited about that. If you want to join. But let me give you another story. Let me give you an idea of what's possible. And it's not just with what we do. There's a lot of different ways to do this, right? There was a guy approached me about 4 or 5 years ago. He works in a little bitty tiny church in New Mexico. And I'd say probably 100, 150 members, not huge. I say tiny church, it's a decent sized church for the little town they're in. He had ran another business, I think, sign company maybe or something. That's kind of a side hustle just to make some extra money. Because if you guys are in ministry or you're doing ministry, many of you know, like sometimes there's not a lot of pay in it, which is fine, right? He came to me and said, I want to be able to give all my money back to the church. I don't want to have to take a paycheck, but I want to continue to be able to preach and teach and do what I do. I'm like, great, let me teach you how. Start working with him. He gets about a year into it, and he calls me one day and he said, hey, I just met with my elders. We just sat down and chatted, and I am now going to give the hang on. Did that go to everybody? Oh, here, hang on. I need to change this link thing. See if that works. That should go to everybody now, I think. I don't know. If it doesn't work, let me know. As you can tell, I'm not a real techie guy. About a year, he comes back to me and he says, hey, I met with my elders, and he said, I told them that I don't want to take a paycheck anymore. And they were like stunned. They were like, wait, what? He goes, yeah. So here's what I want y'all to do. He said, I want y'all to go ahead and pay me, because I want to pay into Social Security, and I want health insurance if y'all give me health insurance. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to give you all the money back plus some to pay for my health insurance and more. And the and the elders are like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, for sure." Fast forward a couple of more years later, he writes me one day and he goes, "Hey, I just passed 100,000 a month," and I was like, "Wait, are you serious?" he said, "Yeah, I just passed 100." The first year of his business, he would write me and he would say things like, "My wife's going to kill me if I don't make any money," because he, like me, had tried many things, um, but he stuck with it. He stuck with it. He was persistent. He stuck with it. He stuck with it. He stuck with it. Fast forward a couple of years after he started doing, after the ministry gave the money back and all that, he opened an orphanage up in Africa, and he funded the orphanage. Um, and and I think it's got a school attached to it, if I remember right. And I've seen a little bit of it, done a little bit of research on it, but I don't know what your dreams are. But if you're stuck in the city right now, there are so many ways to get you out. This is just one of them. Um, if you're stuck in the city right now, like this guy literally was living off of an okay salary in a small New Mexico city, right? He went from that to being able to give all the money back plus a whole lot more, to funding a backpack ministry in his town, to funding a prison ministry in town, to funding a deaf ministry in his town, to funding an orphanage in Africa that's also a school, and it's all named after his kid that passed away really early in life, right? He's living he's living the way he feels like he needs to live to serve and give and do. His If you went to his house today, his house is the same house he lived in whenever he was making a ministry salary. Pretty sure the car is still the same as he was driving whenever he was with the ministry salary. None of that changed. What changed was his ability to give and to do for others, right? And I think so many times those four, if we just have the courage and not let fear trap us, and we would step out, right? It's going to take work. It's going to take work to change that, but so many times we could get out of that city, and we could be there where there is additional stuff, right? For us to be able to bless others, just like those four guys. And I think that's the thing that we get stuck sometimes. And if our first initial instinct is to what? Doubt, right? Great. If you doubt me, show up next week. That's all I got to say. Show up next week. Spend a week with me. If it fits, great. If it doesn't fit, great. You're still going to learn a skill that you can go make money. Doesn't matter to me. At least I've been able to bless you with something to be able to go and do something in addition to what you're doing to be able to go bless others. So I just wanted to share that with you tonight. I hope this helps. Hope this has been good for you. It's just really cool to me to be able to share this kind of stuff. We're going to try to do more of these as the year goes on. I really want to make sure and encourage you to go back through, read some of those stories of Elisha. I think it'll really help you to see what true courage looks like, right? When he stepped out and did some amazing, amazing, amazing things. God's no different today than he was then. So are we going to step out? There's something about that in New Testament, right? Stepping out of the boat or something. Are we going to step out? Or are we going to sit on the boat? Right? Are we going to step out? Are we going to walk towards the enemy army? Or are we going to stay inside the city? Right? Those guys that sat on the boat never got to experience walking on water. So what are you going to do tonight? Right? We can all make a difference. And what's really cool is you have no idea how huge of a blessing that it could be if you stepped out and walked toward that enemy tent. Right? We don't know. You could change the world. You could bless a city. You could bless who knows what, right? By just stepping out of just faith, knowing that God's got you. All right. Y'all have a blessed night. We'll try to do more of these. This is going to be recorded. I'll push it into the group. And I appreciate all of you being on a Thursday night. I know this is, y'all got lots of things to do with your time, and I just felt honored to have you tonight. So y'all have a blessed night, and I will see you guys inside the group.